Welcome everyone. This is Working Group LTS's next meeting. And this meeting is recorded, and we follow CNCF guidelines. So please, it just means please be awesome to everyone. I have pasted the agenda docs in the chat. Please add yourself in the attendees section. And if someone wants to be the note taker, please volunteer.
I can scribble notes.
Okay, thanks, Tim. Let's start with the agenda today. Who has the first item? Tim, do you want to,
That was the survey topic. So I had the to-do to get the survey out to folks who had been issuing conformance results up into CNCF. But after talking to the CNCF, folks felt like it maybe wasn't quite appropriate to just have culled the set of email addresses of people who had committed to the conformance repo, and they actually have a distribution list of what they're calling the certified service providers and a community around that. So they forwarded the survey link to those people with a short message. And then even ahead of that, we heard last week or so that the survey had already had about 500 people who've responded. And Dhaval, you were talking to Stephen Augustus, I think, about trying to get an initial snapshot of what the data is there, even though we've got another month that we're going to leave the survey open.
Yeah, I think there was there was some discussion around trying to see where we are with the data, and wanted to get a snapshot from him. I don't think I have heard back from him on that, so I don't have any updates. Apart from that, if anybody has any comments, and should we actually get a snapshot this early? I think 500 people is a good amount of data and will give us a good indicator of where this survey is going towards. This could be helpful for anybody who is like, I think Tim Sinclair's stable dev proposal and Lubomir's suggestions and his future proposal. It'll help all these proposals to look at the data and see what the user community is thinking. I would say we should start early. So it really makes sense to look at the data early. Does anybody has any comments on that? Any opinions?
I think it'd be really helpful to be able to see which cohorts of users we've got responses from, whether we should chase specific kinds of users to also add their voice to the survey. For example, maybe we've only got answers from developers and we want more answers from long-term operators. Would we be able to tell that from the initial dump of the survey?
The first question itself has a stakeholder division, so we should be able to.
Awesome.
Mostly, yeah. Okay, so I will assume the silence has no objection. We will, yeah, so I'll reach to Stephen, ask him to share the data with the leads or with the community in general, so that we can start looking at the data and see where the survey is going, and if we need to target new audience. Anybody who is using this data can start early to use this data for their talks at KubeCon or for any reasons, yeah. Yeah, 500 respondents. We last time had discussed about KubeADM surveys where we did not receive enough audience for it, or we had concerns about will we be able to reach enough audience. So looks like this is a very interesting topic and a lot of people have participated. At least from the number, it looks like that. Once we have the snapshot, we'll be able to see what kind of audience is the most interested there. Okay, I'll take this as an action item to again follow up on Stephen and see what he has to say, and I'll mention it that the working group folks were okay to receive the snapshot early. Anything else on this agenda?
I'd be interested to see if these are actual numbers, because does the survey have a mechanic to block spam and fake responses? Because somebody might be spamming the results, you know.
Yeah, I don't know how the survey tool works. These are good questions we can ask Stephen. One of the things that I wanted to ask him was about demographic data to see where the results were coming from, IP addresses, etc., to see if there is a way to filter out when we actually massage the data. Can we look at that? So yeah, those are some of the ways. I don't know how to point spams. The comments that people pass, maybe we can ignore comments which contain spam. But if people haven't filled the fields with comments in them, anything relevant, and if they have just filled the choice options, etc., then it's difficult to figure out. Anybody else has an experience with SurveyMonkey?
I have noticed that. Oh, sorry, Quentin, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I joined late and I missed the beginning. Just to contextualize myself, are we having a concrete problem with spam, or are we speculating that we might have one?
We have had about 500 participants, and I think Lubomir was just saying, what if we have it? Do we have any way to filter it? I don't know. We don't know yet whether there is a problem of spam yet.
So it was surprising to me that there were already like 400 responses after the first week.
First 2 weeks.
Yeah, first 2 weeks. It seems, I mean, it's a fairly interesting topic. I'm just questioning if the numbers are real.
Let's be optimistic and assume that we're awesome and everyone loves what we're doing, and
Yes.
work backwards from that point. No, I was just being sarcastic. I mean, yeah, I would personally, let's look at the data and see if there's any reason to suspect that it is dubious in any way before we start over-engineering anti-spam techniques.
It's definitely a contentious topic where people have strongly held opinions. So we could well have just a bunch of strong opinions that people were itching to share.
Yeah, I think once we have the snapshot of the data, we probably have more idea about what we have there. I'll move on to the next topic, the project board. So Stephen Augustus helped us get the project board for working group LTS. I think we couple of meetings ago discussed that we should have a project board. It will be very easy to track all the issues, and I've shared the link in the meeting notes of the project board. I would encourage everyone to go through the link. I've also shared the link in the chat, and me and Tem went through and actually filled the project board. We were learning through the process of using the project boards in GitHub. And Tim, do you want to share the experience?
I guess maybe more of a question to anybody who's used them on a project like this. Our impression was that it's not possible. Does anybody know, is it possible if you have a label put on something to have it automatically show up in a GitHub project board? So like if you just label something working group LTS, could it automatically enter the backlog on the board, and then we periodically triage and think about those things as they come in, or is it all manual?
I don't think that's possible yet. There's been discussion about a tool that we could write that could do that could add labeled things to a project, but I don't see it built into GitHub.
Okay, I feel like Waffle used to have that ability, and I just kind of assumed that GitHub had done it, and Waffle's gone away or is going away now too. So it's an awkward gap.
Yeah, my very limited experience with the GitHub project boards is that they're of extremely limited value. I mean, they're mostly UI and not a lot of features.
Yeah, I think my experience with it was also that it was very a very greenfield, very basic. If you have a new project, probably you can start with it. But if you already have an established project, to start moving issues to this project board is kind of tricky. Plus, also it probably uses the status of um, it's more for code reviews. I mean, if you want to put something in a in progress column, it looks at, do you have any code reviews? Did you have any comments? How many LGTMs did you have? So it probably is more um, customized or designed for issues that are code reviews rather than process oriented ones like what we have already. What I did was I actually went to one of the issues where they were discussing GitHub boards, and I posted the feedback there. I'll share the issue number in the notes later, and also on Slack channel. If anybody else wants to piggyback on that and share more feedback, it should be great, because I think the community should, the people who are using the boards, because we have very limited boards and very few boards right now, and the whatever boards there are, we are one of the people who are active there. So it would be great to go and give this feedback. I think the right SIG for this is Contrabex and Stephen and the SIG PMs. So we should probably reach out to them and say, voice our opinion, saying that, okay, we need better tooling around there. There were some comments around how we can achieve this using labels, etc. That Tim Pepper's suggestion. So we should probably go there and voice our opinion there. But so based on what was available, if you see the project board today, you will see about 20, a few issues. One was the umbrella API versions queue issue and all the sub issues that Jordan had created there, and also one of the API conventions umbrella issue with respect to review guidelines and API convention changes. So if you believe that something that needs to be tracked by working group, probably it's best to add it to this. The process that you can add something to this board is that you need to be part of a team, working group LTS. Initially, there are only a few members in the team, the organizers for this working group, and I've added Lubomir and Jordan as the initial people on the team, but you can always file a request and get added to the team, CCing one of the organizers, so that we can approve, and then you can add more issues to this, more cards to the board, and also help triage all the issues. I think from next week, from the next meetings, we should probably go through the board in the backlogs and start discussing them and probably moving them forward. And that would be a great way to drive the agenda of the meeting, not just from what is there in the minutes doc, especially for the working group where we now have a board. Any comments on that process? Okay, I think everybody agrees that probably the board is great. I'll also let people soak in. You probably are looking at the board for the first time. That's it from the project board perspective. The next agenda item is the change to APAC meeting timings. Nick, are you on the call? No, I don't see him in here, but Nick had received some requests from people from India and other regions that the meeting time that the APAC region meeting time is actually not suitable. So he has floated a doodle. The link is on Slack on the channel. So please vote if you're in a different region, and if you think if you have peers who are working in a different region, or if you know who for whom the time slot does not suit. And I think he's planning to move the meeting by about 3 hours. So it's currently at 5 p.m. and he's trying to move the time to about 8 p.m. Pacific time. So the doodle has a lot of time slots. So it's not like this is fixed in stone. I did participate in one of the APAC region meetings, and they did have quite a few user and user community members participate in the in that meeting, and I got some good feedback. And if you look at the meeting notes, you will see a lot of people excited about the survey, having comments about the survey, etc. Yeah, Josh, we were discussing about the project board and the user experience, and also how we want to triage and run the meeting from next meeting to look at the project board and triage each and every issue that we put over there, move them from back and discuss the progress. Cool. Cool. The next topic is KubeCon EU. Who added this one?
That was me. I just wanted to let people know. So back in January, it must have been, when the CFP was open for KubeCon EU, I'd put in to have a session for us to meet and discuss things related to what we'd been finding in the survey results, which we should have at that point. At the time, we weren't an official working group, so we didn't fit within like the maintainers track for SIGs and working groups. So it was in the standard CFP, and no surprise there, because they had like some crazy huge number of applicants. We did not make the cut. In the meantime, there was a call for SIG face-to-faces, but because of how that stuff is outlined also, I don't think we formally fit the criteria for getting a room in that. So I'll just try to run something for a hallway BOF there, and I'll send out a doodle closer to then.
Why not propose something for the contributor summit though? Because if in discussion of an LTS release doesn't fit within the contributor summit day, I don't know what would.
Let me find the link to, like, there had been some discussion at the I think it was the last steering committee meeting, where they were wanting it to just be like SIG members' internal decision making, as opposed, and like there was something that was worded like, especially they would not give room to things that were like including user feedback or forum or things like that. And basically that our topic felt more like something in the way that they've worded it, that should be a deep dive or intro session, but we weren't an existing entity to apply for one of those back when the CFP was open.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes some sense. I guess this is mostly about end user feedback stuff, and the contributor summit is mostly about contributors, so one can understand that. I was just curious, what is actually standing in the way of us becoming an official working group, so that we don't have to?
We are now.
Groups? Oh, okay.
That happened. Yep.
So I have various back channel. I mean, it might be possible to just go to them and say, please, can we have some slots?
I guess my other question is, what is SIG Release doing for the SIG Release deep dive?
That was targeted at release engineering workflow stuff, so more near term.
On top of that?
We could. It's possible.
Have you contacted? Is it Nancy that organizes these things? It's totally reasonable, I think, to just say, we're now a full-on working group, and we'd like to do a deep dive. And I've had positive outcomes of such requests in the past. Not quite the same, but SIGs that did not send all their stuff in on time and then woke up late and we got in anyway. So you might be able to do the same thing.
What do folks think? I'm willing to do that if.
Yeah, it sounds like the best first step. We can investigate plan Bs if we need to, but I think that's probably the most effective, unless anyone disagrees.
I agree. Jordan, does the working group component, I think it was, even that was created after the submission period ended. So is it trying to do anything specific?
What's the question?
There's a new working group called Working Group Component that's doing some code reorganization. It was formed after the submission period for KubeCon EU, and is it trying to also does it have any submission during contributor summit?
Not that I'm aware of, but I'm not actually going to be in the KubeCon EU, so I haven't been as in the loop on that.
Oh, okay.
I don't think that component standard have a session, but for sequence lifecycle, we have multiple deep dives for the same thing. So if LTS is a sub-project of like a working group under SIG release, we can basically ask for the same, I think.
That would make sense to me. I mean, SIG release asking for a slot and talking about this as part of it seems reasonable.
Are you talking about the contributor summit now or the actual KubeCon?
So
either. I think the topics that we would talk about would probably be different, right? If we did it during the contributor summit, it would be more internal facing, saying what are the things we're looking at, what are the
no, I agree.
Considerations for the project.
What you implied. I think the most important thing is for us to get an actual KubeCon working group deep dive, because that's where we're trying to get feedback from end users. And yes, in addition, the other one at this contributor summit would also be useful.
The survey is going to be out at this point. So a deep dive session discussing the survey, I think it's going to work out okay.
I think it also falls under the SIG PM's persona, because I think from release engineering and from project management, some of the questions on the survey apply, and maybe even the SIG PM might be interested in using the survey data and sharing the opinion and whatever SIG PM talks are making. Probably I should speak to Stephen about this and see where this goes. Anybody wants to take an action item to talk to SIG release? Tim?
Yes, I will talk to myself about that with Stephen and Augustus and see. I mean, I kind of have two hats. Like this long-term support discussion, I feel like is longer term, and we have some more near-term stuff in terms of issues and desired improvements that we've been kicking down the road repeatedly in SIG release. So we were hoping to try and get some momentum behind something more specific there with that deep dive. But yeah, if nothing else, I think it warrants a solid mention there, the survey results and that things are happening as an additional sub-project. And it's something that we could also work easily into the intro session for SIG release as well, at least a mention of it, and kind of get the word out there for people who might be tangentially interested. But yeah, now that that's starting to get closer in SIG release, we need to talk about what we're going to specifically do in those sessions and see how much of that might be able to be used for some LTS discussion. I do feel like the contributor summit side of things, would be useful for us to have some more discussion and talk about proposals, like the stuff that Tim St. Clair has been hashing out, and the ideas that Lubomir has articulated, and potentially other ones, and weigh those relative to the survey. So so I'll also take the action to reach out to Nancy and the Contributor Summit people and just check and see if there isn't somehow space.
So the deadline has passed. I think Quinton offered superpowers here. So without his help, I don't think we can book something.
Just to be clear, I don't have any superpowers. I've had this before. We missed the deadline for other SIGs and working groups, and all I did was email Nancy and ask her if she could slot us in, and she said she'll try, and then she came back a week or so later and said, I found a place for you. So I have no superpowers, other than having done that before, and I don't think I'm the only one who's done that. But certainly, if you have any trouble, feel free to let me know, and I'll see what I can do. I'm pretty sure Nancy will accommodate you if you make a reasonable request.
Yeah, I'll shake the trees and see what I can find, and then and if nothing else, we'll figure out a time. I mean, there were some really useful sessions where 40 or 50 people were huddled together in a group in the hallway in KubeCon EU last year. So I'm sure we could make that happen again if that was the only other result, but we'll figure something out.
Just for clarity, this would be meeting on the day before the official foundation conference starts, so Tuesday, May the 1st.
Could be either, yeah. I don't know how many people, since the Contributor Summit portion, at this point, I don't know how much has been defined or shared publicly, but the main thing that I'm aware of there is new contributor workshop content. So I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people weren't planning to arrive until later on the 20th, in which case the 20th itself wouldn't be a day where people would be around to meet. So I think we'd have to kind of see when people are actually showing up. And I'm guessing most people have already booked travel since hotels are constrained and all of that.
Yes, I think it's a good opportunity. Probably we should discuss this once we have more understanding of what we can do. Maybe next meeting. By next meeting, Tim, you would know much better about what's the status on this and where we are. If for some reason all my visa process goes through, and if I'm able to attend the KubeCon EU, I might do the rejected, go to the rejected conference. I don't know what it's called, and maybe speak there. So maybe we can see other ways if we are not able to get what we just discussed. Yep. I don't think we have anything on the agenda yet. Anybody else wants to discuss any topic?
I'm just pulling up a link to so I don't know if people have seen, a lot of times where conferences have a huge amount of attendees, there's kind of like a B-sides set of talks and conferences that end up going on in parallel or before or after or something like that. So people are actually setting something up along those lines for KubeCon Barcelona. And if people were around the weekend before, that would potentially be a place to attend and kind of put the word out there about these discussions that we're having. But I don't think so. Davo was talking about, since he doesn't have his travel booked yet, if that came together, that he might be able to apply for something there and be there ahead of time. But like, I know for myself, I won't be there in time to do that.
Yeah, well, and I'll be there ahead of time, but that's because I'm already booked at 2 other events. Because there's a whole bunch of official events happening before KubeCon Barcelona as well.
Yeah.
I think we should ask for a deep dive session and see if it's still possible to get one. Some kind of a BOF during the main conference might also be possible, although I'm already looking for space for one for another committee. And The problem is there isn't anything really near the convention center. So if you can't find space in the convention center itself, the space doesn't exist.
There's also hotel lobby potential options. I mean, for some, depending on what we were trying to do.
Yeah.
We'll figure something out.
Or we could just go all go out to a restaurant together. Barcelona restaurants are perfectly willing to have a large group occupy a table for 3.5 hours.
Depending on that, though, it can be really hard from a noise perspective to have much conversation.
Yeah.
Not that it wouldn't be fun to chat over dinner, kind of, but I don't know that we'd have a group chat as much as one-on-one trying to hear what the person next to us was saying.
Calling once, calling twice. Okay. I think we don't have anything else on the agenda, so we have about 20 minutes, 25 minutes, so we can use that time for something else now.
I did have one question before
Okay.
we go. Just a couple action items from the last meeting were to start more targeted docs or discussions around some of the specific dependencies like Go and etcd. Do we have a preferred mechanism for those discussions? Do we want to do those on the mailing list or in a Google Doc or in some other kind of doc? I was going to go ahead and kick those off, but wanted to check where we wanted to do that first.
I was thinking we should first discuss this with the SIG release, so that we don't duplicate the effort, because this was brought up in the in the regular release meetings, like before the meeting. So we want to make sure that we discuss with SIG release and say, if you're not doing anything about this, we can take it over, or if someone who's already doing about this can be part of the working group and do the activity. So
okay, I'll start a thread and copy in the various lists, and we'll go from there.
Yep.
I kind of like the idea of a Google Doc. I mean, some discussion, whether starting on the mailing list or whichever, but like this has come up repeatedly in SIG release, and a variety of issues have been opened here and there. But at some point, like what needs to happen, I feel like, is the semi-opinionated, curatorial, like pull it all together into a place. And Google Docs work well for that type of collaboration.
And once discussion there settles down, I would envision that getting folded back into a committed document.
Yeah, yep.
They're good for rapid iteration, but we want like an actual versioned record eventually. So
Yeah, I'm a great fan of that process. I must say, there's so many email threads and Git issues that kind of just end up going nowhere. So having something that actually has an endpoint, which is a final published document, is really useful.
okay, I will kick that off. And I think we actually had some open issues asking for that discussion already that came out of the versions queue document. So I'll set up a doc that can focus like collection of information and organization of it, and then copy the SIG release and this working group mailing lists and tag the GitHub issue. We will all coalesce and it will be glorious.
Awesome. I had one other last question before we wrap up. I missed a few of these meetings and also am guilty of not having read the minutes. Did we ever get the JP Morgan folks to talk to us here, or is that still a to-do item?
We have not had them, no. So I had a conversation with the person you'd reached out to and talked about having them, like welcoming them, encouraging them to come share their experience and their thoughts around how they're doing upgrades, and there's interest there, but I haven't actually seen them show up.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I actually spoke to Michael Payne last week in person. I think they're still keen. I think they're just looking for a date. I think if we just tell them like to come on this date or give us a better date, they'll be keen to do that. As far as it is, or did you already try that and it failed?
Well, when I spoke to him, I'd encouraged him, and he had the availability, I think, to come the next week. But then he hadn't. So I mean, I don't know. I mean, I could send a specific invite saying, please show up at this time and day. My only concern with that right now would be for the next 2 weeks, times are skewed strangely compared to normal across time zones. But after March 31st, that would be resolved.
He's just in California like many of the rest of us. I don't think it's...
Okay.
He's in Santa Barbara. Okay, I'll leave it to you. I just was curious where we stood on that because they seemed quite keen to give us some hard data.
Yeah, there's a couple others who were willing to share info but haven't quite come around. So I can start proactively trying to invite them on specific days to come and share.
Yeah, a lot of these people are super busy, so you'll have to, give them a half-hour, 20-minute time slot or whatever. Otherwise, they ain't going to be here.
Yeah, I think if you look at the APAC region meetings, there are some users who attend the meetings. Probably we should arrange similar sessions, and I'll talk to Nick about that to see if we can get them to speak about their upgrades and their user experience in this area. There was another action item, Jordan, was about talking to SIG testing about testing between different from testing the components between different versions. You mentioned you would probably get more information from the SIG testing on any plans or designs on that.
Yeah, I apologize. I hadn't gotten to that yet. So
yeah, that's cool.
Those two are on my list still.
Yeah, I think some of these we could start putting them up on the project board. That way it would be easier to triage, and this is something that probably we need in the future. We need to be able to test upgrades and test component behaviors across different versions. So it's something should probably just be an issue and easier to track. And maybe you can CC the right folks and they'll probably just comment there.
Sure.
Okay, if anybody else has any comments or any other topics they want to discuss. All right, I'm calling the meeting then. 19 minutes back to us. Thank you everyone for joining in. Have a good day.
Bye.